So the readings for today are from Marianne Williamson and Ernest Holmes. So Marianne Williamson says, if you're looking at the world and not grieving, then you're not conscious. But if you're looking at the world and not rejoicing in the miraculous possibilities for healing it, then you're spiritually immature. Ernest Holmes says, no greater good can come to you than to know the power already within you is a power to live and the power to create. Not only to create for yourself, but to create for others, the power to do good, the power to heal, and the power to prosper. And so it is.
So welcome to those of you who may have just arrived in the sanctuary. The theme for the month of August has been gratitude. I celebrate and respect other nations and peoples. And my talk title today is Honor and Respect All People. Now, according to Wikipedia, right, the highest form of intelligence that there is, you laugh. Honor is the idea of a bond between an individual and a society, a quality that manifests itself as a code of conduct, and it has various elements such as valor, chivalry, honesty, and compassion. It's an abstract concept that entails a perceived quality of worthiness and respectability that affects both the social standing and the self-evaluation of an individual or an institution. Now, as a verb, it means to hold in great respect, or high esteem, or high regard. Respect, on the other hand, is a positive feeling or action shown towards someone or something considered important. It conveys a sense of admiration or respect for, or not respect, but of honor for good or valuable qualities that someone or something might have. It is also the process of honoring someone by exhibiting care or concern or consideration for their needs or their feelings. Synonyms for respect include admiration, kindness, appreciation, reverence, consideration, and graciousness. Now, as I sat with these titles and these definitions, I couldn't help but really notice that in general, they are not reflected in the world in which we are living today. Now, I do believe that there are definitely people that do honor and respect others, but I don't believe that that is necessarily the experience of everyone on the planet. We only have to turn on the news or jump on Facebook or hang around at the water cooler to really be able to hear about the violence or the addiction, the mass shootings, the inhumanity, the irresponsibility to the planet, the disenfranchisement, or the despair that is really apparent. Now, we're blasted on all sides by fear and anger. And on top of that, in every arena of our life, we can find all kinds of isms. Ageism, sexism, racism, anti-Semitism, transgenderism, terrorism, and even homophobia-ism. I just made that one up. And that's all, just to name a few of them. Now, I know that this conversation about what's going on in the world today is not always an easy conversation to have, especially when we know that the world around us is a reflection of the collective consciousness, and guess what? All of us are a part of that collective consciousness. Now, whether we're participating in it consciously or unconsciously, we are participating in it. And not only are we participating in it, but we are affected by it in some way or another, each one of us, in some way or another. Now, the overarching experience of the world today is a product of all of the thoughts that came before this moment. It's a product of all of the beliefs back of all of those thoughts, and a product of all of the feelings that surround those thoughts and those feelings. Now, many of the beliefs have been handed down from generation to generation since the beginning of time. And many times, those beliefs are not questioned, but they're simply bought into and then brought forward through our own consciousness. Now, I believe that most people are essentially benevolent and caring. But throughout human history, we have been constantly led astray through our conscious or unconscious identification with the beliefs that do not serve a world that works for everyone, conscious or unconsciously. Now, all of those isms that I mentioned are those kinds of beliefs. In simple terms, these kinds of isms can be described as mental thought forms that divide and mislead us from within and from without. They effectively create a fog within our consciousness that obstructs love and compassion and honor and respect. In order to be able to cut through that fog, we have to become more aware of what we have in our consciousness. We have to become more aware of our beliefs and willing to question what other people are telling us. We have to be willing to become informed and more open to all cultures and all religions and all ideologies and all ways of being in the world. We have to have the courage to try something different and to stand out from the crowd. We have to be willing to think differently, and we have to do all of that with compassion and forgiveness and patience for ourselves. Right? Now, our underlying theme for the entire year is spirituality in action. Beth Green, in an article called Spirituality in Action, A Call to Inner Revolution, invites us to engage in what she calls an inner revolution. She says, we can no longer pretend that spirituality is just an inner experience. It is our sacred trust to be agents of higher consciousness in the world. We can no longer focus just on ourselves. Spirituality is the call to care, to connect, and to confront. So spirituality in action is really literally taking what we believe to be true, and I'm talking about true with a capital T, out into the world and utilizing it. So how do we do this? What thoughts, beliefs, and actions are required of us in order to be able to put these truths out into the world and shift the collective consciousness in order to be able to shift the collective experience that we are all having. So today I have 3 points for us to contemplate. The first is, there is only one thing happening here. Despite the fact that there appears to be a multiplicity of people and things and places, everything and everyone came from one source. There's only God, and God is everywhere at all times. Beth Green says, oneness is the essence of spirituality, which moves us to confront the collective pain that is real and to dedicate our lives to transforming ourselves and our world so that we may find a way to trust one another and open ourselves to new learning and new ways of being. Oneness requires personal and collective transformation because the damage done to every human being through our upbringing, socialization, and life events can be overwhelming and sabotage our most cherished beliefs in oneness. The entire cosmos is unity being expressed as multiplicity. Now, wherever we live, we are always going to, eventually, at some time or another, really interact in some way with people that are different than we are, with cultures that are different than our cultures. And when most of us think about culture, our first thoughts go to race and ethnicity. But culture really goes far beyond that. Our cultural orientations are influenced by race, yes, but gender, class, physical and mental abilities, sexual orientation, religious and spiritual beliefs, age, and so much more. So we're all a complex mixture of all of these cultural influences woven together. And because of that, even people that share cultural similarities are always going to be unique. It's impossible to define a person by a single cultural label. Impossible. But what can be said about us is that at our core, we're all the same. At our core, there is a spark of the divine that connects us one to the other in ways that can never be broken, in ways that make us more alike than we are different. Now, on one hand, the invitation is to see the face of God in everything and in everyone with absolutely no exception. On the other hand, the invitation is to be willing to become more culturally responsive. Now, being culturally responsive requires openness to the views, thoughts, and experiences of others. It is about exploring and honoring the differences. Now, this includes developing cultural self-awareness, because understanding your own cultural makeup is the first step to being able to understand that others hold different values and different beliefs than we do, and that they believe in those values and those beliefs just as much as we do. It involves being willing to learn what we can about other cultures by sitting down with someone from another culture and really speaking with them in order to be able to increase our awareness and our knowledge. Now, when we know more about others, about the people that are different than we are, then we are not as likely to fall into old patterns of taking action from a place of ignorance and fear. It doesn't have to be so scary. We can, through this knowledge, learn to really understand, appreciate, and value diverse views without really trying to impose our own views upon them. We also have to resist all stereotypes, and whether we're talking about really positive ones or negative ones. Statements such as blondes are dumb or Asians are always really good at math will never be true of all individuals within that population. Stereotypes are really unreliable and they're untrue. Now, and lastly, we have to come to terms with our own naivete. We have to be willing to forgive our own mistakes and ignorance, and the invitation is to be able to learn from them, to move through that moment in time and to be able to learn from it and do better, right? We always say, if we'd known better, we would have done better. Now, this idea has been coming up a lot for me lately, not only because I was preparing for this message, but also because my book club is currently reading, I'm listening, but reading a book called Why Are All the Black Kids Sitting Together in the Cafeteria? Now, the book is written by Dr. Beverly Daniel Tatum, and the book provides insights about racial, ethnic, and cultural challenges that we are facing, that we have been facing, and that we continue to face in our American society. Dr. Tatum has this really wonderful ability to be able to look at our problems through different perspectives and to challenge us to look in the mirror as we really think about who we are and whom we serve. Now, for me, this has been a really thought-provoking book, a book that's really led to a number of different inner examinations about myself and about the culture of the planet as a whole. I became aware of the fact that many people use the word prejudice and racism interchangeably. But what she says in the book is that for us to do that does a disservice to the world. And that she says that there's a very important distinction between them. So she says that prejudice is a preconceived judgment or opinion, and it's usually based on a very limited amount of information. And that she assumes or believes that really all people have prejudices because we are so continuously exposed to and bombarded by misinformation about other people. We've grown up with so many stereotypes about people that are different than we are. Stereotypes that came from our parents or from our communities or from our cultures or from the television or in the media. She says certainly some people are more prejudiced than others, actively embracing and perpetrating negative and hateful images of those who are different from themselves. When we claim to be free of prejudice, perhaps what we are saying is that we are not hate mongers. But none of us is completely innocent. Prejudice is an integral part of our socialization, and it's not our fault. Now, when she says it's not our fault, that doesn't mean that we're absolved of responsibility. Each of us needs to look at our own behavior. Am I perpetrating and reinforcing these negative messages, or am I seeking to challenge them? This is true whether we're talking about a person of a different color or culture or sex or age or abilities or gender identities or anything else, such as being a Democrat or a Republican or blonde or overweight or not having a high school diploma. There are stereotypes about everything and everyone out there. Now, when she talks about racism, she is using a definition that describes racism as a system of advantage based on race. A system of advantage based on race. And this could include, access to better schools or housing or jobs. So, a system of advantage based on race. She says this definition of racism is useful because it allows us to see that racism, like other forms of oppression, is not a personal ideology based on racial prejudice, but a system involving cultural messages and institutional policies and practices, as well as the beliefs and actions of individuals. So it describes when a person is supporting a policy that is creating racial inequality. So if you work at a place and they have a hiring policy in place that really speaks to hiring white people at the expense of hiring other people of color, and you don't say anything about it, are you perpetrating that idea, that policy? And really, you can't. In this book, she talks about it. She gives all kinds of examples about all different kinds of races. And you can't believe the laws and the rules and the policies that are still on the books or practiced today that really are oppressive to one racial group or another. It's amazing that in today's world, all of that still exists. Now, this awareness, as I was reading this book, really created this divine discontent within me, and kind of, well, it should, right? Well, it should. Now, I don't really believe that our world reflects the inclusive world that God had in mind when God created it. I think we've gone a little astray. In a post on our minister's listserv, Reverend Mark Anthony wrote, "I have come to believe that there are people who have immersed themselves so fully in science of mind, the teaching of science of mind, that all they see is God. How about we get on to focusing on the enormous power of God that is in everyone? How about we focus so strongly on God that God appears and the problem dissolves?" Sounds like a good idea. Point number 2, what we think about and how we treat others is a reflection of our inner consciousness. Now, that which is outside of us, whether we like it or not, whether we consciously chose it or not, is a reflection of our inner consciousness. We create our lives from the inside out. All of our thoughts and beliefs create the experiences of our lives. We've said that time and time again. Anger and hatred have such incredible energy. Energy that draws and attracts more of themselves, more of that energy into our experience. So fighting anger with anger doesn't work. Fighting hatred with hatred doesn't work. Love, on the other hand, is more subtle and way more powerful. When we can love and extend that love out to people who are different than we are, the differences disappear and the planet will actually have an opportunity to heal. We know inherently that we are one with everything and with everyone, and to dishonor another is to actually dishonor ourselves in one way or another. Think about it. Every time we point a finger at someone else in anger or fear or distrust or judgment, 3 fingers are actually pointing back at us. So the invitation is to see beyond the differences, beyond the veil of the circumstances and the challenges, to the truth that is always behind them, the power and presence of God. Point number 3, as we heal our inner world, we heal the world, transforming it into a world that works for everyone. The effectiveness of action, the effectiveness of the actions that we take in the outer world depend on the source from which they sprang. So all great spiritual teachers will really emphasize that we really need to get our own house in order first. We need to work on our own consciousness. Without inner transformation, there is no grounded or lasting reform. There is no collective healing that could be possible. If our thoughts, beliefs, and actions arise out of our unhealed selves, our power to assist in creating a world that works for everyone is severely limited. If our thoughts, beliefs, and actions come out of a consciousness that is grounded in our awareness of our oneness with God, then we are extremely powerful and we are extremely effective, both individually and collectively. When we begin by connecting with our inner experience of communion with God, we will all know what actions, because of that internal inner wisdom, we'll all know what actions are ours to take and what actions are not ours to take. When we begin by connecting with our inner communion with God, our actions can be pure and clear and firm. This kind of action, when it's rooted in our true self, that self with a capital S, comes from a deeper knowing of what is, as Ruth said earlier today, what is real, good, true, and beautiful, beyond labels and dualistic judgments of right or wrong. From this place, our energy is really positive, and it has the most potential for positive change, the most potential to create change for the good. So I leave you with this quote by Reverend Jim Lockhart, who says, "The real challenge confronting humanity today is a transformation of consciousness rather than mechanistic changes in human or social behavior." Our teaching tells us that no outside condition is stronger than our internal potential. We are called to rise to the occasion, to embrace and thrive in changing times, to reveal the truth of our being in each and every moment. We are the ones that we have been waiting for. It is our turn to step into the world around us and bring a powerful, realized consciousness of healing and love. Truly, at the end of the day, all we have is the power, presence, and beauty of God and each other. If we really want to create a world that works for everyone, the invitation is to honor and respect all people. And so it is. Please turn within. With my eyes closed and my attention turned inward, I am acutely aware of that power and presence that is within me and surrounding me. I feel joy in that knowingness. I feel peace in that knowingness. I feel such an unconditional love that wants to just spill out of me, touching everything and everyone on the planet. This, I believe, is what God intended for all of its ambassadors. Be me, shine like me. Bring this energy forward. Touch everything and everyone. I know that we are the ones to do this, that we have this presence within us, that we can tap into it, that it is powerful, that the love that we have within us is more powerful than anything we could come up against in the outer world. And so I claim ease and grace around living this life, around honoring and respecting, getting to know, reaching out to, listening to, allowing new ideas to come into our awareness, to try them on like a coat and choose whether they're right or wrong for us, rather than simply believing in old stereotypes that we grew up with or that live in race consciousness. We have a choice. And so I claim ease and grace around that choice, around being who we truly are and bringing that out into the world, spirituality in action. And I'm so grateful to know this truth and to speak these words. So grateful for the power of prayer, knowing that these words are loosed into a law that only ever says yes, that my words are clothed in form even as they are spoken. And so I speak them and release them with love and gratitude and full expectation of their manifestation, letting go and letting God be God. And we anchor this together for ourselves, for each other, and for the world simply by saying, and so it is. And so it is.